Afternoon, Paul. I know you talked a little bit about the changes yesterday that since the last meeting, but how has Pierre-Luc Dubois changed the dynamic of your group when it comes to, tackling the strength down the middle that the Leafs provide?
I think we just look a lot more in terms of matched with them, right? So they've got two really dynamic kind of center icemen, and now we do as well. So with Tavares and Matthews, they can control the play at both ends of the ice, both shoot it. They both do a lot of dynamic things. And we have Mark and Pierre-Luc that will be able to do the same for us.
Go next to Lance Hornby from the Toronto Sun. Go ahead, Lance.
Hey, Paul. Just wondered, you've coached a long time in two of the biggest markets in Canada, dealing with both the good and the bad. Do you have sort of a golden rule that goes along with that in dealing with those day-to-day pressure?
I try to be honest in what I say, and I try not to worry about what I say after I said it. That might be the golden rule. When I walk out of this room, I'm not going to spend another think. I told this story the other day that in my first month, I think when I was in Toronto, and you guys will get the geography of this, I'm driving home and I'm living in Oakville, and I'm driving down the Gardiner, and I'm beside myself. I must have done 18 interviews that day. I got asked similar questions and gave similar answers, but I mean, I couldn't even remember what I had said. Started to think about the inconsistencies of what I was saying, and I hit the 427. I mean, I can remember this like it's yesterday, and I remember thinking, enough. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go up there, answer the question, and leave it. And I'm going to say something stupid more than once. I'll say something that's conflicted by another statement later than the day. I'm just going to do the best I can with it and leave it. I think it ended up being, for somebody that works in the market, it's easier on you than it is the people around you, because I mean, we truly, like, we don't read and we don't listen to the radio stations, and we don't do that stuff. So the people around you do, and they hear all the other input that the coach is kindly given in these markets. But I think what I learned to do was just go up there, try to tell the truth, try to be not angry about it, and then just leave it there.
We'll go next to Paul Friesen from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Paul.
Hey, Paul, you have said in the past that the style of the division is completely different from the grind of the Central. So I'm just wondering, are you trying to exert that Central grind onto the North, or has it forced you to adapt something that you've been doing for years?
Well, that's a really good question. I think in some ways, you always want to be the person or the team that dictates the style of play, but you aren't in, the other team has a big impact on that. I think it's just a far, far less physical division. It's also, and this may be as much about the change in hockey every year, the East, we've always felt, and in parts of the Pacific, were more of a puck possession game, right? Which was funny. I mean, I think in that first Montreal game that they were credited for 43 hits. I think that's the stat I saw. And I thought maybe there were 7 or 8 hits in the game. So what we're used to seeing is completely different than what you see in this. So I think a bit of both. We're not as physical as we were maybe 3 years ago, but that has to do with the changes on our blue line. But the game isn't either, right? And if you got the puck, you're not throwing any hits. So we'd rather have the puck now with this group than not have it. So I don't look at the hit numbers very often. You can walk off the bench and whether it was a physical game or not. You also know whether your team was physical enough. We always think there's more room for it. But I guess I'm going to try to answer your question. We are not as physical as we used to be. And the division, I don't think, will allow us to get there, kind of where it would look like a St. Louis, or even maybe Nashville. Maybe the most physical games with us were always Nashville. We haven't seen one of those games yet.
We'll go next to Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, Paul. You mentioned puck possession, and so I want to ask you about a very specific part of that, which is faceoffs. Something maybe recently you guys have struggled a little bit statistically in the dot. How do you get better at that? How concerned are you? Toronto's obviously a very good team in faceoffs.
Yeah, very, very strong faceoff team. So it's a skill, and there's more to it than just bearing down. And you find really center icemen improve with age, because so much of this is experience. So short of that, you want to prep your center iceman for what the tendencies of the other players do. And we do that, a fair amount of video available to them on that. We work on it at the end of practice. And then as a group, we will have to talk about at times not trying to win it clean and getting more scrums, right? Getting it stalled in the circle to give ourselves a chance to battle a little bit harder. I mean, it's a critical piece to the game. I know my understanding from an analytics point of view, it's not highly correlated to winning, but it sure does seem like it is. Like for a possession team, which I think we're all trying to be now, you want to start with the puck. And in periods of hockey that we'd say didn't really love our period, but we were okay, it usually meant we didn't start with the puck very much. So we were defending. So you didn't mind your game because you're defending a lot, and you know it's even, or you're down one or you're up one, and that's okay. But you didn't give yourself a chance to get really on a roll. And I think you got to win faceoffs to get on that kind of offensive roll where you wear the other team down with zone time, because you win the draw and you start with the puck.
We'll go next to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, Paul, I know earlier and just now you were kind of explaining why, the differences from coming from the Central Division, but yesterday, both Adam Lowry and Paul Stastny referred to the Leafs power play as lethal. And your team has really done a nice job of staying out of the penalty box. I count 15 out of 25 games where you've been shorthanded 2 times or less. So
Right.
how impactful will that be in these next 3 games in particular?
Yeah, you cannot casually put this team on the power play and be undisciplined with the kind of penalties that, the stick penalties in feet behind it in the offensive zone, the quick grab on the shoulder. I felt like early in the year we were on the power play a lot, and so were other teams, and then it really dried up. I mean, it's been a long time since it feels like since we've had a number of power plays in the first period. I think we've got a good enough power play with good players out there. Toronto's got, the best power play. Both teams are mindful of that. We need to stay out of the box, because you just cannot put these guys on the power play with enough frequency. They're just going to score goals.
We'll go next to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Thanks, Gregor. Hey, Paul. It's come up a bunch of times, the performance that Pierre-Luc Dubois had against Austin Matthews in the playoffs last year. I mean, Chevy brought it up when he acquired him. Now, I'm not asking you to give me the matchups that you're going to go with. I guess just an overarching theme of what you saw in that last year and what the likelihood is that, should you be matching up against this Toronto team in the future, that he's the guy that you would use to shut Matthews down.
That will be a function of the line, right? It wouldn't be just the center iceman. It's who they're playing with. It's the whole group. With both teams feeling that they've got 2 really powerful offensive lines and then a really good grinding line. And now with Matty Perreault, we've got a 4th line that generates offense. Like the idea is the same for both teams. I think when they come to the rink, they kind of view their teams the same in terms of the structure of their lines. So I would imagine coaches will take a look at, at the first 10 minutes of the first period, make a decision on, is there an advantage and or a disadvantage happening in the line matchups that you're running? I'm on the road, so I won't have the face-off say in terms of the matchup, but the rotation, I mean, I have the right to move my rotation around. That would be a way to do it. But I don't feel that you can, if the 2 teams had never played, that you can line this up and say there's an advantage with one player necessarily over the other. There's the weakness. We got to get this line out against that line. I think the 2 teams are structured too similarly to say that we could run our top 2 offensive lines against each other. Our checking lines could grind each other. The 4th lines will come out with high frequency based on both schedules and the confidence that both coaches have in their 4th line, and the players are going to decide it.
We'll go next to Mark Masters from TSN. Go ahead, Mark.
Paul, regardless of the matchup, would you expect Pierre-Luc's performance against the Leafs in the bubble last year to give him a little extra confidence or swagger coming into the series this week?
I think you feel good playing against certain teams, right? I think every time the puck drops, there's the opportunity for the change of momentum and a new story to be written. Somebody asked me earlier today, are you happy kind of coming here because you don't have to answer the Matthews Line question about the draft? So this is the new question. And I would sure like Pierre-Luc's play in that series, but at the end of the day, it was still about 20 men against 20 men, and it wasn't the story of those two men.
Go next to Craig Simpson from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Craig.
Hi, Paul. You were talking a lot about your lines and matching up and the balance that you have. I'm wondering, 25 games in, I know last year the challenge was on the back end with so many chances. How do you and Charlie on the back end feel about the consistency of your defense and how much of a difference that makes for you to be able to coach the way you'd like to coach right now compared to last year at this time?
Yeah. Well, it's still the area of the opportunity for greatest improvement in our team is defensive. Now, I wouldn't allow myself to look at the goals against per game after the Montreal game out related. I think we were 8th goals against in the NHL coming into it and probably about 4th on offense. And I have not looked at that webpage. I want to give it a few games to see if I can level it off a little bit. So we felt, I don't want this to be too long an answer for you, but last year, when you look at what happened to our blue line, we lost 4 of 6, and then we got into the island and lost Josh Morrissey, and we had Carl Drystrom getting off the plane from Europe. We had Ville Heinola in our lineup, Sami Niku in our lineup, Anthony Botetto in our lineup. We had to go get Lucas Spiza off basically the practice squad in the island, and we finished 10th with goals against. So Charlie Huddy, and Wade Flaherty with our goaltending just did a masterful job, right? And then trying to tailor that to a pretty highly skilled young forward unit is a challenge. So that's our challenge. Everybody knows it. And I feel if we could have talked between the 2 Montreal games, I would have given you a far more glowing report on how I felt we had done to this point, because I think that's been kind of the quiet story. And I get it. The analytics will tell you it's not good, but it's a whole lot better than it was. And what we give up is better defined, excluding our last game. So we feel there's lots of good there, right? Like we feel stronger in that department. I'm just not ever saying that will be the strength of our group. It's going to be the area that we'll work on the hardest to improve it. But we're still, forward driven group with a real strong goaltending.
Are you able to coach the way you want to, though, with this group on the back end?
Oh, that day's never coming. Right?
Okay.
Because I would just say, Bork, you and Coffey are out there, and then Robinson, you're going next, right? And then Simpson, you just have to go to the front of the net. I know you'll do that. So nobody gets to do that.